An arrogant police officer stepped out of his car in the heart of the Capitol and slapped an elderly veteran across the face right in front of the National Memorial. Blood dripped onto the soldier's medals, while the crowd stood frozen in fear. In the distance, 97 Harleys simultaneously cut their engines, scarred faces and cold eyes watching. In that moment, justice left the courtroom and mounted the saddles of leather-clad men. They didn't know that the journey to restore honor to an old soldier would make all of America bow before the word honor. On the morning of Memorial Day, Washington, D.C., was bathed in early summer sunlight, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of freshly laid wreaths across the reflecting pool. Frank Mallory, 82, a Marine Corps veteran, walked slowly along the stone path to the World War II memorial. He wore an old but neatly pressed suit, his chest adorned with faded silver medals, each step carrying respect for fallen comrades. At the reserved veterans' path, a black and white police car was parked obstructively, its tires over the line marked reserved for veterans. Frank paused, lightly tapping the car window with trembling fingers. Inside, Sergeant Cole Maddox, 38, a local cop, reclined in his seat, chewing gum and scrolling on his phone. Frank politely said the area was reserved for veterans with passes, asking him to move so others could access it. Maddox glanced through the window, his eyes haughty. He rolled it down, his voice cold. "I'm a cop, I park where I want." Frank calmly replied that the law applied to everyone, even police. Maddox smirked, flung the door open and stepped out, tall, arms covered in tattoos, reeking of cheap cologne and gasoline. "Old man, you teaching me the law?" he growled, stepping close to Frank's face. Frank only said, "I'm just asking for respect for those who fell." The words ignited Maddox's rage. He shoved Frank's arm, making him stumble back, nearly falling. Before Frank could steady himself, Maddox delivered a sharp slap across his face. The harsh sound echoed through the memorial, startling onlookers. Frank staggered, his glasses flying off, blood trickling from his mouth onto his collar. Maddox didn't stop. He grabbed Frank's shoulder, shoving him hard to the stone ground, his head hitting a low step. A young man stepped forward to help, but Maddox flashed his badge, barking, "Back off. He's obstructing an officer." He bent down, picked up the bouquet Frank carried, and hurled it to the ground, petals crushed under his boot. Leaning close, he whispered coldly, "Your holiday means nothing to me." Frank lay still, eyes wide, breathing ragged. Maddox turned, opened his car door, slid into the driver's seat, and slammed it shut. The engine roared, tires grinding over the pedals, spraying dirt onto a nearby stone plaque. Not far off, 97 Hells Angels, bikers attending a memorial for their own, turned their heads at the commotion. They saw it all, the slap, the shove, the bouquet thrown down, and the cop driving off as if nothing happened. A young biker raised his phone, capturing Maddox's license plate, face, and badge, clearly. Their leader, Rex Viper Connors, gripped his handlebars, eyes narrowing. No one spoke, but in that silence, fury was kindled. As the police car vanished, Viper stared after it, his voice low and steady. "He just struck an entire generation." No one replied. Only the distant roar of Harley engines echoed, a warning that the storm had begun. That afternoon, the Liberty Roadhouse bar, less than a mile from the memorial, became the unspoken meeting point for the 97 Hells Angels. Late-day sunlight glinted off the Harleys, lined up like a battalion, ready for battle. No one mentioned the incident, but every eye turned to the man at the end of the bar, Rex Viper Connors, their leader. A former Marine, gray hair, shoulders tattooed with a winged skull. Viper set his phone on the table, the video of Maddox slapping Frank Mallory playing clearly. The bar fell silent, only old rock music and the hiss of cigarettes audible. A young biker slammed his fist on the table, but Viper raised a hand for quiet. "No one throws a punch. We do this right," he said, his voice hoarse, cold but firm. The meeting began. 3 teams formed on the spot. The first to gather more videos and witnesses from tourists at the memorial. The second led by a long-haired biker called Crow to dig into Maddox's background, employment records, address, past complaints. The third led by Doc and Tank to tail Maddox 24/7s, logging his every move and contact. Orders were scribbled on paper, no phones, no traces. The bikers knew that to teach an arrogant cop a lesson, they had to operate like a special forces unit. That night, Crow started with public records, cross-referencing badge numbers and vehicle registration. Within hours, he uncovered a trail of internal reports on Maddox's 4 civilian complaints for violence, 2 allegations of taking bar owner bribes to skip inspections, 1 witness intimidation case, all dismissed for lack of evidence. At the bottom of the file, pending promotion, Captain made Crow his. He's up for a promotion. The news reached Viper immediately. Meanwhile, the surveillance team filmed Maddox returning to his Fairfax apartment. He lived alone in a high-rise, drove a gray Ford Interceptor, and stopped by a private bar at night, drinking whiskey and playing pool with colleagues. Every move was recorded. At liberty, Viper watched each clip, eyes fixed on the screen. He's not just arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable, he said curtly. The next morning, the team reconvened. Evidence was organized into stacks: attack videos, complaint records, surveillance photos. Viper sketched a plan on a board. Phase 1, gather evidence. Phase 2, go public. Phase 3, let Maddox collapse under the nation's eyes. Not a single punch, not a scratch. We do this clean, Viper stressed. The room nodded. Hell's Angels might be known for their roughness, but for men like Viper, they held a code: never harm the innocent, and never tarnish the honor of those who fought for this country. Frank Mallory embodied that. As night fell, the Harleys rolled out of the lot, each man heading a different direction, moving silently like shadows. No sirens, no shouts, just the steady rumble of engines cutting through Washington's night. Across the Arlington Bridge, Maddox was still drinking at a bar, unaware he'd become the target of 97 leather-clad men with winged skulls. Viper stood on the bar's porch, lit a cigarette, and watched the taillights fade. He knew this fight needed no guns, no blood, only the truth, and this time, the truth would be the deadliest weapon they'd ever wield. 2 days after the Liberty Roadhouse meeting, the Hells Angels moved to Phase 3, a full investigation of Cole Maddox. Men once outside the law now operated like a covert task force. Viper coordinated from an Arlington clubhouse, where a Fairfax County map lay spread on a table, pinned with notes and photos. Crow handled records. He started at the local courthouse, scouring public citizen complaints. Within hours, he found Maddox's traces in 4 cases: a 2017 assault during an arrest, a coerced confession that got evidence thrown out, and 2 cases shelved for lack of witnesses. All victims shared a profile: poor, no lawyers, too scared to pursue. Crow copied everything, sent it to Viper and Doc, then tracked down Maddox's past contacts. A former Reston bar owner said Maddox extorted him for protection. A long-haul trucker confirmed Maddox stopped him, forcing a fake fine to avoid trouble. Their stories aligned, a cop with a real badge acting like a thug. Meanwhile, Doc's team shadowed Maddox. Each night he hit the Blue Line Lounge in Central Fairfax, a cop hangout. There he bragged about his upcoming sheriff campaign, the true guardian of justice for the county. They recorded every boast, every smug word. In Arlington, Viper watched the footage, smirking faintly, a snake in a badge. The biggest breakthrough came from Tessa, the group's hacker, a former network engineer. She quit after her husband, a cop, was scapegoated by Maddox in a friendly fire incident. Using old internal access, Tessa breached the DC police complaint system. In a secure folder, she found dozens of reports on Maddox marked pending, but never reopened. Some bore superior signatures, hinting at a cover-up. She downloaded it all, encrypted it, and sent it to Viper via offline drive. That night they met, evidence, videos, audio, internal records stacked neatly on the table. Viper said curtly, "No doubt now, he's not just the guy who slapped a veteran, he's a cancer in the uniform." An older biker, a former military policeman, suggested sending it to the Federal Inspectors Committee. Viper shook his head. "If we hand it over, they'll bury it. We go public. Bring it to light." That night, Tessa dug deeper. She accessed Fairfax County's Election Commission server, finding a file labeled Cole Maddox for Sheriff 2024. His campaign site was live, touting him as a guardian of honor and order. Photos of him shaking hands with ex-officials, smiling for cameras, clashed starkly with the image of him striking Frank. She printed it, set it on the table, and the room fell silent. "He wants to be sheriff," Crow said softly. "Then we'll show the people who he is." A new plan formed instantly. Crow's team prepared a media dossier. Photos, videos, victim names, and timelines. Doc's group gathered more witnesses, ensuring legal recordings. Tessa handled tech anonymous accounts to blast the info online, plus copies to major outlets. Viper assigned roles. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, he's no longer a cop. He's the face of corruption the public needs to see. No one objected. Each took their task, leaving the clubhouse in silence. Outside, rain began to fall, heavy and cold. On the boulevard, the Harleys roared to life, their pipes thundering through the wet night like drums heralding a campaign to unmask a false guardian of justice. 3 nights later, with all evidence gathered, the Arlington clubhouse became a true command center. Yellow light spilled onto whiteboards covered in photos, diagrams, and timelines. On the table, dozens of USBs, hard drives, and thick, color-coded files. Viper stood in the center, his cold eyes scanning the documents like weapons. "It's time," he said briefly. And the group got to work. Tessa sat at a large screen, editing the video of Maddox's slap on Frank Mallory, splicing it with investigation clips, complaint photos, witness statements, and abuse records. Another biker, Tank, a visuals expert, sharpened each frame to ensure Maddox's face, badge, and license plate were crystal clear. Crow cross-checked every file, matching complaint dates with Tessa's internal data, ensuring no discrepancies. No errors could be allowed. They knew any gap could let Maddox and his system quash the campaign. Once the dossier was complete, Viper contacted Ethan Cole, an independent reporter, who left the Washington Post for refusing to soften police corruption stories. They met at an old parking lot behind Union Station. Ethan arrived, glanced around, took the drive from Viper, and said, "If this checks out, Fairfax County will explode." Before leaving, he promised to cross-verify everything within 24 hours. That night, Tessa scoured social media, tracking early scattered discussions. Someone who filmed the slap posted it on Reddit, racking up over 100,000 views in hours. Veteran forums buzzed, many recognizing Frank Mallory, the old Marine who survived Key Sand. Rumors spread like wildfire. The veteran slap incident became a hot topic, but the cop's identity was still unknown. That's when Viper ordered Phase 3, verify and release. Crow cross-checked all sources, matching traffic camera locations, GPS from the original video, and even that day's weather to confirm lighting, avoiding claims of staging. When everything aligned perfectly, Viper nodded. "Tomorrow morning we show the nation his true face." Meanwhile, Tank's team prepped a street campaign. 97 bikers split into 5 units, each covering a DC area from the Lincoln Memorial to the National Mall. Their task was to appear simultaneously, wearing Hell's Angels jackets, handing out flyers with Maddox's face, and the question, "Is this your guardian of justice?" No chants, no protests, just presence at the right time, right place, like silent specters with a message. Viper knew silence was more terrifying than shouts. In the clubhouse, the clock read 2 a.m., but everyone was awake. Ethan Cole texted confirmation. All data was legit. The story would go live at 8 a.m. on an independent news platform and social media. Viper signaled to dim the lights, leaving only the screen glowing with Maddox in his uniform, smirking arrogantly. "Tomorrow," he said, "everyone in this city will know who he is." Outside, light rain fell, reflecting the red glow of 97 Harleys lined up ready. Each man donned a leather jacket, helmet, and said nothing. As Viper stepped out, the engines roared in unison, their sound tearing through the capital's night. The Harley pipes bellowed through empty streets like a wordless proclamation. Across town, Cole Maddox sat in his upscale apartment, watching sports news, chuckling at rumors of the veteran slap spreading. He switched off the TV, sipped his drink, unaware that in hours, his face would appear on millions of American screens, and that 97 bikers were ready to turn Washington's calm morning into a quake called justice. The next morning, the Arlington clubhouse was packed. All 97 Hells Angels gathered, their bikes lined up in long rows out front like an army awaiting orders. Gone was the usual casual or roadie air. Everyone knew this meeting was different. Inside, the morning news played on a big screen. Cole Maddox's face appeared across channels, headlines reading, "DC cop accused of assaulting veteran on Memorial Day." Clips posted by Ethan Cole had gone viral. Millions of views in hours. Flashing camera lights outside the police station showed the city in an uproar. Viper Connors entered, black jacket with a winged skull, old leather gloves fastened tight. He set his phone on the table, where a DC map lay marked with red dots around the police headquarters. His voice was low and firm. "It's time we show up." The room fell silent, only the clock ticking. Viper pointed at the map. "The goal isn't a fight. The goal is to force a public investigation, in broad daylight before the whole nation. They can't ignore this anymore." A young biker asked, What if the cops surround us or strike first? Viper replied sharply. No hands raised, no weapons drawn. Cameras are our shield. He paused, looking at each man. We're not thugs. They wronged a veteran, and we'll make them answer for it, with their laws, not our fists. His words landed heavy and clear, like a military command. Tank, a former sergeant, took charge of the main formation. 47 bikes in front, 50 in the outer ring, maintaining order and blocking traffic if needed. Crow handled media, contacting trusted reporters. Tessa set up a live stream, ensuring the event was captured from multiple angles. Viper turned to Doc, signaling, "Stay in touch with the Veterans Hospital. If Frank Mallory agrees, we'll bring him to the press center tomorrow." Doc nodded. The plan ran like a military operation. Formations, positions, timing, and escape routes all mapped out. Everyone knew their role. When Viper raised his hand, the room stood. "We don't act out of hate," he said briefly. "We act for honor." His words echoed in the air, thick with gasoline, tobacco, and sweat, igniting every gaze with shared resolve. Outside, sunlight hit the waiting Harleys. Tank checked each row, engines rumbling like a drumbeat. Viper glanced at his watch, 5:45 a.m. He turned for final words. "When the clock hits 8, Washington will hear us." No one replied, just nodded, silently donning helmets. Hands twisted throttles, pipes roared. All 97 engines fired at once, their sound merging into a steel tremor shaking the dawn. The clubhouse doors swung open, and the convoy rolled out in formation toward the Capitol's highway. From a distance, early risers stopped on the roadside, watching the bikers glide by in perfect order. No slogans, no shouts, just the weight of silence from men who chose to stand for honor. As the first sunlight of the day hit their chrome, Viper revved his engine at the lead, the wind whipping a small American flag on his bike. He knew this wasn't just a ride. It was a public verdict for a man who insulted a generation of veterans. At 8 a.m., Washington, D.C., erupted with the roar of engines echoing down Pennsylvania Avenue. 97 Harley-Davidsons rolled in perfect formation toward the city center, chrome glinting in the sunlight. Passers-by stopped, phones raised to record. A Hells Angels biker convoy advanced straight toward the Metropolitan Police Department headquarters, like a moving line of black steel, led by Viper Connors, followed by Tank, Crow, and Doc. All wore leather jackets emblazoned with winged skulls. No shouts, no protests, no banners, just the thunder of 97 Harley engines blending into a warning drumbeat. When they halted, the avenue fell silent. The police building's glass windows reflected the long line of bikers standing in formation, helmets gleaming, gazes cold as steel. Press and TV crews were already there, tipped off by Tessa and Crow the night before. Cameras focused on the convoy, microphones poised. Viper dismounted, removed his gloves, opened his bike's rear compartment, and pulled out a laptop connected to a portable LED screen set up on a pickup truck behind. One press of a button, and the footage appeared. The original video, Sergeant Cole Maddox slapping Frank Mallory across the face at the memorial, the slap clear in the mic, blood spilling, flowers falling. No commentary, no edits, raw sound, raw images. The crowd stood silent for seconds, then murmurs of outrage spread. Some covered their mouths in anger. Reporters recorded, cameras zooming in on Maddox's face in the video. At the building's entrance, a few officers stood frozen. Viper turned away, saying nothing, only holding up a USB with all the evidence for a CBS reporter. She nodded, rushing off as the live broadcast began. Within 10 minutes, the clip flooded TV, YouTube, and social media. Headlines flashed across screens. D.C. Cop assaults Marine veteran at National Memorial. The images spread like a storm. Outside, the 97 bikers stood still. Crow walked the line, checking spacing, keeping the formation perfect. Tank held the rear, ensuring no one breached the restricted zone. A few officers tried to clear the road, but citizens flooded the sidewalks, filming, cheering the bikers. "Let them speak." A shout rang from the crowd. Reporters pushed forward, asking, "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" Viper didn't answer, just pointed to the screen, showing Maddox's attack, then crossed his arms, his gaze speaking for him. On the upper floors of the headquarters, the command staff held an emergency meeting. The D.C. police chief watched the news on TV, his face taut. He knew this couldn't be covered up. As the third broadcast aired, hundreds of online comments flooded in "Suspend Maddox now. No one disrespects veterans." Public pressure mounted by the minute. At 9 a.m., a police spokesperson appeared before cameras stating, "Sergeant Cole Maddox has been temporarily suspended pending investigation." The words, broadcast live over speakers, triggered applause from the crowd. Viper glanced at Tank, giving a slight nod. They'd achieved their goal, but the Hells Angels didn't celebrate. Viper signaled the bikers to mount up. A unified roar of engines thundered, loud as a storm. The convoy turned, moving slowly down the avenue, departing in the same formation they arrived in. No vandalism, no threats, just hundreds of eyes watching. As the last bike rounded the corner, a reporter whispered into her mic, "They came like a storm and left like a warning." Inside the headquarters, officers peered through windows, watching the bikers vanish. In the lobby, some citizens lingered, talking non-stop. Online, millions shared the story, with #hands of 4 veterans trending nationwide in 2 hours. In Fairfax, Cole Maddox sat before his TV in his apartment, face pale as the news showed his face. His phone rang incessantly. Colleagues, superiors, reporters, but he didn't answer. Outside, the city seethed, while in his small room, the TV replayed his slap like a verdict. Across the Potomac, Viper and the leaders stopped at a suburban gas station. He removed his helmet, wiped sweat, and checked his phone. A headline made him smile faintly. D.C., cop forced to suspend Officer Cole Maddox amid public outcry. Tank, standing nearby, looked over and asked quietly, "What's next?" Viper pocketed his phone, eyes fixed on the hazy Capitol. "We wait. He'll react. And when he does, we finish it." In the distance, engine echoes lingered like the aftermath of a judgment. No blood, no riots, but that morning, all of America knew 97 bikers had forced a system to bow, using only truth and the honor of those who knew discipline. That afternoon, as news channels replayed the 97 bikers surrounding police headquarters, Cole Maddox sat in his high-rise apartment, face flushed, gripping a whiskey glass until it cracked. The TV looped footage of him slapping Frank Mallory, each replay a dagger to his pride. Every channel said the same. D.C. cop suspended over Officer Maddox. He slammed the remote on the table, yelling in rage. "Criminals, a bunch of damn criminals," he roared, then called old squad mates. Maddox had ties to senior officers and planned to use them. "I want everything on those Hells Angels, especially the one called Rex Connors, alias Viper," he said into the phone, voice icy. "Track them, search them if needed. I'll sign the warrant." The colleague hesitated, but Maddox pressed. "I still have my badge. Don't forget that." Hours later, a Fairfax SWAT team received orders to raid the Hells Angels Arlington clubhouse for suspected ties to organized crime and threats to law enforcement. Late afternoon, 4 police cars screeched up, sirens blaring. The door opened, and 97 bikers stood waiting. No resistance, no reaction, just standing tall, arms crossed, letting the cops enter. The search lasted nearly 2 hours. They tore through the meeting room, checked computers, pried open drawers, even drained fuel tanks of a few Harleys for weapons or drugs. But they found nothing. No guns, no bullets, no evidence to charge. As the SWAT team left, their eyes averted in embarrassment, Tank stepped forward, opening the door for them, impossibly polite. "You boys done?" An officer nodded, avoiding Viper's steel-cold gaze from the porch. They left in silence, leaving behind the smell of smoke and the faint rumble of Harley engines in the yard. In Fairfax, Maddox paced his office, slamming his fist on the desk. "Impossible," he hissed. "They're criminals. Everyone knows it." A subordinate whispered, "Nothing illegal there, sir. They're cleaner than we thought." Maddox spun, eyes blazing. "Then make them dirty." From that moment, he launched a personal vendetta. He called records room contacts, demanding they dig up old Hells Angels cases, bar fights, speeding tickets, anything usable. He ordered Viper Connors tailed, trackers on his bike, phone taps, even hiring private eyes to follow Viper's ex-wife. "I'll make him pay," Maddox told his subordinate. "No one humiliates me and walks away." But he didn't know Viper had anticipated this. In the clubhouse, Tessa monitored police networks and spotted unusual access from Maddox's account. "He's hunting us," she told Viper calmly. He nodded. "Good, let him think he's the hunter." Crow, handling public info, gathered more data for a counterstrike. The bikers didn't use fists, they used facts. Doc sought out old witnesses, those Maddox had extorted but never spoke up. They recorded interviews, each telling a chillingly similar story. A cop abusing power, threatening, coercing confessions. Meanwhile, Maddox unraveled. Reporters hounded him. Neighbors avoided him. His son refused calls. In a closed meeting, he slammed the table. We have to prove the Hells Angels are organized crime. But when he pushed for an official investigation, the DA's office rejected it for insufficient legal grounds. He shouted, "Why? Because the public loves those bikers?" No one answered. Footage of Maddox raging, veins bulging, outside the station hit social media with the caption, "The man losing control talks about order." That night, Maddox drank alone in his apartment, the TV replaying the slap. Each crack made him hurl his whiskey bottle at the wall, liquor splattered, glass shattered, reflecting his distorted face in the TV's glow. Meanwhile, in the Arlington clubhouse, the 97 bikers met again. Viper pointed to a screen showing data Tessa pulled from police systems, access logs, sent emails, outgoing calls. "He's violated privacy," Tessa said. "I can prove it." Viper nodded, turning to Crow. "Start phase 2. We won't wait for his next move." Crow grinned, placing a thick dossier on the table. The cover read in bold, "Operation Clean Badge." Outside, the night wind swept through flags on the boulevard, carrying the sound of Harley engines starting. The Hells Angels didn't talk of revenge. They talked of truth. And this time, instead of exposing one slap, they'd unveil an entire rotten system behind the badge Cole Maddox clung to. 3 days after Maddox ordered the Hells Angels surveillance, the bikers' counterstrike began. In the Arlington clubhouse's sealed room, Tessa sat before 3 computer screens, typing rapidly. She didn't need deep access. Maddox left his own trail. An encrypted file, named private_fund_Fairfax, appeared in his system. Inside were transfer logs and emails between Maddox and Harold Grant, a businessman owning Fairfax bars protected by police. Clips from the Blue Line Lounge's cameras were extracted. In one, Maddox sat at the bar, took a thick envelope from Harold, grinned, and pocketed it. Tessa looked at Viper, saying simply, "Enough." Crow took on editing the data. He compiled the videos into a logical sequence, from Maddox slapping Frank Mallory to him taking cash. No effects, no narration, just dates, times, and raw footage. At the bottom, he added, "This is your law enforcement." Meanwhile, Doc and Tank contacted Ethan Cole, the reporter who broke the slap story, handing him the drive. Ethan said, "This time, he's got no way out." The next morning, at 6:30 a.m. The article. Sergeant Cole Maddox, the badge for sale, hit 3 major outlets, Washington Post, The Atlantic, and Independent News. Accompanying it was an 8-minute video titled "DC Cop Suspected of Bribery and Citizen Assault." Within 15 minutes, it racked up 2 million views, flooding Twitter and Reddit. No explanation was needed. Maddox taking money spoke for itself. TV channels replayed it, interspersing an interview with a past victim. "I was arrested for not paying $500. Now I see he's still the same, just caught on camera." In Fairfax, Maddox's phone rang non-stop. Reporters, colleagues, even his ex-wife called, but he didn't answer. When the article hit his TV screen, he threw his glass to the floor. "They want war?" he roared, calling his superior. But the voice on the line was cold. "Cole, you're suspended indefinitely. Internal Affairs is taking your file." Maddox froze. "You can't do this to me," he shouted. The reply was curt. "We have to protect the department's image." An hour later, TV cameras caught Maddox leaving the police building. No badge, no gun, shirt wrinkled, hair disheveled, eyes dazed. Reporters swarmed, mics in his face. "Did you take bribes? Any words for veteran Mallory? Are the Hells Angels behind this?" Maddox said nothing, shoving a reporter aside, getting into his car and slamming the door. But the image went live nationwide. By noon, the local Republican Party held an emergency meeting. Maddox, once a top pick for Fairfax County Sheriff, was struck from the list. A spokesperson stated, "We cannot back a candidate under investigation for corruption and violence." All funding contracts were canceled. Campaign posters removed in a day. Maddox lost everything: position, reputation, political future. In the Arlington clubhouse, no one celebrated. Viper sat before the TV, watching the news, silent. Crow Prop presided over the table, reading the headline, "Cole Maddox suspended indefinitely. DOJ opens federal probe." He asked quietly, "What's next?" Viper didn't turn nothing. "Now the public speaks for us." And as he predicted, social media exploded. #dirty badge and #hands of 4 veterans dominated for 48 hours. TV stations interviewed veterans reacting to the scandal. One said, "Without the Hells Angels, this would have been buried like always." The quote spread like fire. In Fairfax, Maddox was completely isolated. Supporters turned away. Colleagues avoided him. Even old friends in the force went silent. In a paparazzi clip, he left a restaurant in an old jacket, cap pulled low, dodging cameras but still recognized. A woman shouted, "Thug in a uniform." He turned to retort, but saw two Hell's Angels across the street, just watching, saying nothing. He got in his car and sped off. That night, Maddox sat in his dark apartment, only streetlights filtering through the blinds. His phone rang endlessly. Unknown numbers, reporters, media. He opened a bottle, downed several gulps. In his haze, he turned on the TV, but every channel showed him Maddox slapping a veteran, Maddox taking cash, Maddox suspended. He screamed, hurling the bottle at the screen, sparks flashing before it went black. Meanwhile, across town, in the clubhouse's dim yellow light, Viper stepped onto the porch, watching rain fall on the Harleys. He knew the counterstrike was over. They needed no violence, no threats. They used truth, and truth did what bullets or fists never could. It destroyed a man who thought himself untouchable. The Hell's Angels stayed silent. No statements, no posts. The nation spoke for them. On TV, the final broadcast ended with Cole Maddox from badge of honor to symbol of decay. Viper turned off the screen, sat down, eyes distant. "One snake-skinned," he said softly. And in the steady rain outside, a Harley's pipes roared briefly, low and heavy, like the heartbeat of a force that had delivered justice. On the fourth night, after the scandal broke, Washington lay under cold rain. On the highway to Virginia, Cole Maddox's gray Ford Interceptor sped through the night like a ghost. He'd lost everything: job, reputation, career, and now just wanted to flee the city. Rain lashed the windshield, wipers racing, streetlights reflecting on his distorted, weary face. He turned on the radio, but every station blared news about him. Former Officer Maddox suspended indefinitely. New evidence shows Maddox took bribes. He shut it off, slammed the steering wheel, and cursed loudly. As his car reached the Potomac Bridge, he glimpsed distant headlights, long, steady rows approaching slowly but surely. At first he thought it was a patrol, until the Harley engines roared over the water like thunder. He slammed the brakes, his car jerking to a stop mid-bridge. In the rearview mirror, red lights spread across the lanes, dozens of black leather figures forming two rows. He cracked his door, intending to turn back, but two more Harley lines blocked the rear. In seconds, the entire Potomac Bridge became a sealed steel ring, 97 bikers surrounding him. Not a shout, just the steady rumble of engines like a ceremonial drum. Traffic at both ends stopped, cars pulling over, passers-by filming. Viper Connors stepped forward at the head, rain soaking his leather shoulders, his cold eyes locked on the police car. Maddox sat still, hands trembling, eyes glued to the mirror. As Viper approached, he locked the door, but seconds later, Tank and two bikers advanced, opening it with a specialized lockpick. Maddox was pulled out, slipping and falling onto the wet bridge. He started to curse, but looked up to see Frank Mallory standing there, under dim yellow light and light rain. Frank wore his old suit, silver medals pinned to his chest, holding a fresh bouquet. Two bikers helped him to the bridge's center. Maddox froze, unable to believe the man he'd humiliated stood before him, so calm. Viper stepped closer, voice low and rough. "Justice has spoken, but he has words for you." Frank walked slowly, each step echoing on the wet bridge. He looked at Maddox, silent for seconds. His face held no anger, only weariness. He placed the bouquet at Maddox's car wheel, where Maddox had once crushed his flowers at the memorial. Viper signaled Tessa, who activated cameras, filming from multiple angles. The bikers stood in a silent circle, bike headlights illuminating the bridge, turning the space where Maddox knelt into a focal point. Frank pulled a small cloth from his pocket, handing it to him. "Wipe it," he said softly. Maddox frowned, confused. Frank pointed to the bouquet, then his medals. "You dirtied both." Maddox clenched his teeth, rain washing dried blood from his face, but his hands still shook. Viper stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder, forcing him to kneel. The bridge fell utterly silent. Maddox looked around, seeing 97 bikers encircling, dozens of distant cameras aimed at him. He knew there was no escape. He bent down, took the bouquet, wiped mud from its petals with the cloth, then cleaned the medals on Frank's chest. His hands shook so much the cloth fell. Frank said nothing, just watched. When Maddox looked up, their eyes met, one full of regret, the other only the silence of someone who'd forgiven long ago. Viper nodded to Tessa, signaling to stop recording. "It's done," he said, then turned to Maddox. "You won't be touched. You'll live with this image forever. That's the fairest verdict." Maddox didn't reply, just breathed heavily. Tank offered Frank an umbrella, but he declined, standing in the rain. He bent down, picked up the bouquet, and placed it in Maddox's hands. "Now you know where to take it." Maddox gripped the flowers, head bowed, unable to look up. Behind, traffic remained stopped, many filming distant sirens, sounding but no one approaching. When Viper raised his hand, the 97 bikers shut off their engines in unison. The sound ceased, leaving only rain and Maddox's breathing echoing on the bridge. Frank turned, walking slowly to Doc's car, two bikers helping him in. Viper stepped close to Maddox, speaking low but loud enough for cameras. "When he forgives you, you're lucky. If not, this bridge would be your grave." Then he signaled. The 97 bikers started their engines, the roar shaking the bridge. Maddox stood alone, clutching the bouquet, eyes closed. When he looked up, the convoy was gone, only red taillights stretching down the avenue. Behind him, police cars stopped, officers stepping out, asking questions, but no one spoke. Tessa's footage spread among the bikers that night. It captured Maddox kneeling in the rain, wiping the medals of the veteran he'd humiliated. No commentary, no music, just rain and the dim glow of Harley lights. The next morning, Washington, D.C. awoke to an unprecedented media storm. Across every social media platform, from Twitter to YouTube, a video titled "The Night of the 97 Angels" appeared simultaneously, amassing millions of views in hours. The clip had no narration, no music, just footage of Cole Maddox kneeling on the Potomac Bridge in the rain, trembling hands holding a bouquet, and wiping the medals on Frank Mallory's chest. The glow of dozens of Harley headlights reflected on the water, creating a scene both somber and sacred. Viewers stayed silent through the opening, but by the end, when Frank walked away and Maddox remained kneeling, motionless, comments erupted like a wave. "True justice. This is the real America. He deserved it. Hell's Angels, outlaws who uphold more honor than badge wearers." Within 24 hours, the video hit over 30 million views, topping national charts. Major networks replayed it. Reporters standing on the Potomac Bridge recounting every detail. Legal experts were invited to debate. Some praised the bikers' actions as moral judgment, while others questioned, should justice be served outside the law? But one thing was undeniable. Maddox kneeling became a symbol of collapse. At noon, the FBI announced it was reopening Maddox's case. A federal investigation launched, focusing on two angles: abuse of power during his tenure and allegations of taking bribes from Fairfax businesses. Prosecutors reported financial transactions matching earlier media reports. Transfers to Maddox's account from businessman Harold Grant, dated the same day he was filmed taking an envelope. That afternoon, Maddox was summoned. Reporters packed the courthouse hallway, microphones thrust forward, camera flashes relentless. He appeared in a crumpled gray suit, no badge, no lawyer. When a reporter asked, "Any words for the veterans?" Maddox bowed his head, silent. 3 charges were listed: bribery of a public official, abuse of power, and assault on an elderly person. The judge ordered him detained pending trial, no bail. The news spread nationwide. The Washington police chief held a press conference that evening before hundreds of cameras. His voice was weary but clear. "We cannot deny what happened. This is a stark warning about letting power cross boundaries. The D.C. Police Department will begin a comprehensive internal overhaul." The plan was announced, reviewing all officer records, forming an independent oversight committee with veterans and locals. Shocking figures emerged. Over 20 complaints against Maddox had gone unprocessed during his tenure. Meanwhile, the media hunted the Hells Angels. News outlets tried reaching Viper Connors, but all met absolute silence. No biker spoke, posted, or appeared publicly. They became shadows behind the event. Men who didn't need words, as their actions spoke. The press called it the silent campaign of the Steel Angels. A week later, preliminary investigation results were released. Maddox had taken at least 4 bribes over 2 years, totaling over $60,000. 2 witnesses confirmed he'd threatened them to keep their business licenses. Prosecutors also stated the Potomac Bridge video showed no evidence of violence from the bikers. They only surrounded, filmed, and caused no harm to Maddox. "There is no legal basis to charge the Hells Angels," the press release stated. "Their actions may have been unconventional, but not illegal." Public reaction erupted again, this time not in debate but in praise. Major outlets ran headlines like "When Outlaws Teach Police What Honor Means." Veteran organizations sent thank you letters to the Hells Angels, calling for recognition as community guardians. A photo of Frank Mallory with Viper Connors at a veterans flag ceremony went viral, captioned "Some don't need badges to defend justice." In temporary detention, Maddox sat in a small cell, yellow light casting on his pale face. He saw a newspaper slid through the door slot. Bold headline: Hell's Angels cleared. Maddox formally charged. He crumpled it, threw it to the floor, then looked through the bars. Outside it rained, and in the sound of falling drops he thought he heard distant Harley engines, low, strong, resolute. Across the river, the Arlington clubhouse glowed with light. Viper sat alone, reading the day's final news, then turned off the TV. He stepped onto the porch, eyeing the bikes lined up in the yard. On the table, the USB with the Potomac Bridge video lay quietly, like a knife that had done its job. He said no more. Justice had reached its end, not through violence but through truth, and a lesson no police academy taught. Honor doesn't need a badge, just the right action. A month after the Maddox case closed, Washington was draped in flags again. Before the Pentagon's main hall, a special ceremony was held, not to commemorate war, but to honor an old soldier who'd become a symbol of resilience and honor. Frank Mallory, 82, a Marine veteran once humiliated at the memorial, walked a red carpet between two rows of an honor guard. He wasn't alone. Behind him, 97 Hells Angels bikers in black leather, white gloves, formed an escort, engines off but their pipes echo lingering in the earth. On their chests, temporary metal pins read, "Ride for Honor." The ceremony was broadcast live nationwide. The Secretary of Defense gave a brief but moving speech. Mr. Mallory proves courage isn't just on the battlefield. In peacetime, it's standing firm against injustice without losing dignity. As he awarded Frank the Medal of Honor, the audience stood, applause unending. Camera flashes captured Frank saluting, eyes fixed on the flag, his face calm as when he wore the uniform. Below, Viper Connors and the Hells Angels leaders stood still. No helmets, no sunglasses, gazes steady. They didn't clap or cheer. For them, silence was the highest respect. After the ceremony, the Defense Department officially recognized the Hells Angels as voluntary honor escorts for veteran tribute events. The news swept the media, those once called criminals now symbols of national honor. That week, Viper and Frank announced the Ride for Honor Foundation, a nonprofit backed by the Hells Angels to fund housing and health care for homeless veterans across America. The fund started with $200,000, mostly from spontaneous donations post-Maddox. Viper said at a brief press conference, "We can't change the past, but we can give those who sacrificed for this country a present they deserve." In its first month, the fund built 2 temporary housing units for veterans in Virginia and Ohio. Bikers pitched in, repairing, painting, building doors, no hired labor needed. The press followed, snapping photos of Hells Angels with hammers and lumber, front-page headlines reading "Steel and Compassion," 2 sides of the same symbol. As the story spread, a veteran support movement surged. In southern states, other biker clubs, Outlaws, Mongols, Freeriders, held Ride for Honor Week, cross-state rides raising funds for veteran hospitals. Tens of thousands lined roads, waving flags, offering water, holding signs, "Respect our veterans." National TV called it the largest humanitarian parade since World War II. The media spared no praise. Time magazine dubbed the Hells Angels a symbol of justice beyond the system. Where the law falls short, they uphold honor. The Atlantic published a long piece titled "The Leather Angels and the Lesson of Justice." News channels hosted veterans, scholars, and even police officers for discussions. Many admitted they didn't need guns to make us reflect on ourselves. In Arlington, the Hells Angels clubhouse was revamped, no longer a hub for racing or parties, but a coordination center for the fund. Frank visited every Friday afternoon, sitting on the porch, sipping coffee with Viper. They spoke little, just watched Harleys come and go, each rev a reminder. Justice isn't always in the courtroom. That month, Frank appeared on 60 Minutes. When the host asked his thoughts on the Hells Angels being seen as outlaws, he smiled. "I fought beside men everyone thought had no future. But on the battlefield, they were the ones ready to die for their brothers. These bikers are the same. They're not perfect, but they know what honor is." His words silenced the studio. The next morning, thousands sent emails, donating more to Ride for Honor. The fund surpassed $1 million in 10 days. Viper, hearing the news, said only justice is starting to do good. Each Memorial Day, Ride for Honor holds a 47-mile journey from Washington to Arlington, symbolizing the 47 states before Alaska and Hawaii joined. Frank rides in a flag-adorned sidecar, Viper leading. Crowds line the roads, kids wave, American flags fly. That day, America seemed united in one truth. Honor never dies. It just needs someone to remind us. And those reminders weren't politicians or courts, but leather-clad bikers, once feared, now revered as modern knights. A year after the Pentagon ceremony, the Cole Maddox case closed. A federal court sentenced him to 18 months for bribery and assault on an elderly person, but due to cooperation, he served 1 year. In prison, Maddox was quiet, compliant, filing no appeals, granting no interviews. The press called him the cop who fell in silence. On release day, leaving Lorton Federal Prison, he carried only a cloth bag, old photos, and a discharge certificate. No one came for him, no colleagues, no family. The world that knew his name now held only mocking old articles. He took a bus out of the city, heading to Arlington, where his downfall began. Light rain fell, cold Potomac River air blowing. At a stop near the National Cemetery, Maddox saw a large sign, Ride for Honor Center, Veterans Support Facility. It stopped his heart. It was the center Frank Mallory and the Hells Angels founded post-scandal, aiding struggling veterans with jobs, housing, and treatment. He took a deep breath, stepped off, clutching his bag. Frank sat on the porch, watching Harleys pass the gate. Older now, his eyes remained bright, calm as on the Potomac Bridge. When Maddox approached, Frank recognized him, but didn't stand. "What are you doing here, Maddox?" His voice was rough but not cold. Maddox stood tall, no excuses. "I've got nothing left to lose. I came to apologize, and if you'll allow, to do something useful." Frank eyed him for a long moment. "What makes you think I'd trust you?" Maddox lowered his head. "I don't, but I need to try." Silence stretched. Finally, Frank pointed to a small building, where young veterans unloaded donated goods from a truck. "The center needs a warehouse manager. Low pay, hard work, but it matters. You can start there." Maddox nodded instantly. "No questions." Frank added, "No one here cares who you were, only what you do now." Maddox worked from dawn to dusk. He sorted goods, fixed plumbing, hauled rice, mopped floors, tasks he'd never imagined doing. Veterans at the center eyed him warily, but Frank insisted on fair treatment. If he wants to make amends, let his actions speak. Maddox didn't complain or argue, just worked quietly. A week, then a month passed. No days missed. Each morning he raised the American flag at the center, saluting, a small act that shifted some perspectives. One afternoon, as Maddox organized the warehouse, Frank approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You know, the kid who worked the warehouse before quit because he couldn't handle the old guy's war stories. But you never complain." Maddox gave a faint smile. "Maybe because I've been through my own battlefield." Frank nodded. "Your battlefield's in your conscience. Looks like you're winning." News of Maddox working for Ride for Honor spread after months, but Frank declined interviews. "This isn't a story for the press," he said. Still, veterans at the center began talking about the odd warehouse guy, once a cop, now living quietly among them, always first to arrive, last to leave. One said Maddox spent breaks listening to their stories, helping with benefit applications. Another said he paid for a stranger's car repair. No one heard him speak of his past, only saw him work harder than anyone. A year later, Frank called Maddox to his small office. On the table was an envelope with the fund's logo. "We're opening a new branch in Baltimore," he said. "I want you to run it. It needs someone who knows what happens when honor's lost and how to reclaim it." Maddox paused, then nodded. "I don't deserve the honor, but I'll do my best." Frank smiled faintly. "You've made amends, Cole. The rest is living right." After that, Maddox faded from the media. No events, no broadcasts, no statements. When reporters sought him, he said only, "I'm not news anymore. I'm just a worker." But his image lingered in photos locals snapped. Maddox painting the center's walls, delivering food to veteran camps, pushing a wheelchair for an elderly man. Each time, social media buzzed, maybe justice doesn't end in court, but starts with one right act. One spring morning, Maddox met Frank at Arlington Cemetery. They stood before white headstones of fallen comrades. Frank said slowly, "You know, back then I didn't think you'd come back, but now I think I was wrong." Maddox replied softly, "If you hadn't handed me that cloth on the bridge, I'd still be the old me." They stood silent, wind stirring the flags, distant Harley engines humming. Frank patted his shoulder. Now you know why we call each other brothers." As they left, sunlight broke through. Maddox paused, looked at the flagpole, and smiled faintly. In that smile was no arrogance, only the peace of a man who'd walked the path of redemption. Though no one said it, all understood. The cop who lost his honor had found it again, not through law, but through trust and a chance to start over. 2 years after Frank Mallory's Medal of Honor, Ride for Honor was no longer a small Virginia fund, but a national movement. That summer morning, at a sprawling lot outside Washington, nearly 1,000 bikers gathered, all wearing a new patch on their leather jackets, Honor Ride Initiative. At the convoy's heart, the original 97 Hells Angels stood in the front row beneath a fluttering American flag. It was their first public appearance since the Maddox affair, but this time, not to confront, but to commemorate. Viper Connors, now over 60, still rode the lead Harley. Beside him, in a flag-adorned sidecar, Frank Mallory sat steady, eyes resolute despite time's added wrinkles. He raised a hand in salute, and the crowd behind erupted in applause, engines roaring like a vow. Honor Ride 2028 began. A 7-state journey from D.C. to Texas to honor veterans and fund new support centers. The 1,000-mile road saw crowds lining routes, waving flags, holding signs, "Thank you, veterans." Kids ran out with water. Elderly saluted military style. At each stop, they visited cemeteries, laid wreaths, stood in silent tribute. Few spoke, but the engine's roar through small towns was the clearest declaration. We don't forget. Frank Mallory was the ride's soul. Though frail, he insisted on joining, telling Viper he wanted one last ride through the country I defended. At rest stops, he was helped from the sidecar, hand on the flag, eyes distant. The press, following the journey, called him America's soldier in the sidecar. In Nashville, over 3,000 Southern state bikers joined. They came from every club: Mongols, outlaws, American veterans riders. Once rivals, now united under the Honor Ride patch. An older biker told TV, "On this road, there's no past, only brothers who respect freedom." The image moved the nation on evening news. In Texas, the convoy stretched nearly 5 miles. A massive metal ribbon winding through highways, headlights blazing like moving stars. Local police didn't block them. They escorted, clearing roads, treating it as the state's largest veteran tribute parade ever. At each stop, donations poured into Ride for Honor, surpassing $10 million in 10 days. Returning to Washington, over 20,000 people waited along Constitution Avenue. Frank sat steady in the sidecar, clutching a small flag. As the convoy stopped at the War Memorial, he was helped down. Viper supported him, walking between 2 rows of saluting bikers. The original 97, the original Angels, stepped forward, placing gloved hands on each other's shoulders, forming a circle around Frank. TV cameras captured it. Men once deemed rebels now guarding an old soldier like an honor guard. After the ceremony, a reporter asked Viper why they kept the number 97. He replied simply, 97 saw that slap. 97 chose justice, and 97 will keep that oath for life. The quote graced Life magazine's cover, headlined, "The 97 Angels, America's new symbol of unity." Soon after, biker groups nationwide joined the 97 Network, a federal volunteer system founded by the Hells Angels, operating independently, but united in protecting and supporting veterans. Each chapter was encouraged to hold local honor rides, raising funds for hospitals, housing, and scholarships for veterans' children. In Chicago, the Outlaws raised $200,000 in a day. In California, once rival clubs rode Sunset Boulevard together for the cause. The movement spread beyond bikers. Schools, businesses, and the military joined. A senator proposed Honor Ride Day, a national day celebrating civilian veteran unity. The government passed the resolution, recognizing the movement as part of America's civic values. That evening, in the Arlington clubhouse, Viper and Frank sat together, gazing at a large framed photo on the wall, capturing the 97 bikers riding across the Potomac Bridge in the first year. Beneath the image, etched in brass, "The 97 Angels, we ride for honor, not revenge." Frank smiled, his voice weak but steady. "I've seen war, and now I see peace." Viper looked at him, replying softly, "This peace is held by wheels, not bullets." Outside, distant engine roars echoed as groups of bikers left the city, continuing their own journeys. On every jacket, beneath the winged skull logo, a small line read, "For Frank, for every veteran." The 97 Angels was no longer just a group's name but a symbol of a generation of American bikers, men with gritty pasts who learned to use steel and loyalty to rebuild a nation's honor. The next Memorial Day, Washington's sky was strikingly clear. Red, white, and blue ribbons adorned Constitution Avenue, American flags fluttering in the breeze. From early morning, the World War II memorial was packed. Amid the sea of people, 97 Harley-Davidsons stood in perfect formation, engines silent, only the faint click of cooling metal under the sun. At the lead bike, Viper Connors sat upright, old leather jacket on, silver hair catching the wind. In the sidecar beside him, Frank Mallory sat steady, holding a red, white, and blue bouquet. To his left, a row of honored guests included one special figure, Cole Maddox. He arrived early, in a simple gray suit, no security, no cameras, unnoticed. After a year at the Veterans Center, he was thinner, hair flecked with gray, but his eyes were different, calm, humble. When Viper dismounted, their gazes met briefly. No words needed, just a slight nod of acknowledgement. The ceremony began. A trumpet's notes rang long and clear in the air. The honor guard marched past, slow and solemn. Frank, leaning on his chair, stood, walking step by step to the stone wall etched with his comrades' names. His trembling hand touched the inscription James read. Mallory, his brother, fallen in 1968, at K. Sane. His gaze lingered longer than usual. Maddox quietly approached, stopping a few steps away, then bowed his head. No one spoke. Frank turned, looked at him, then placed the bouquet at the monument's base. The simple act was like a closing of all grudges. Behind them, the 97 bikers stood in formation, saluting. Tank, Crow, Doc, Tessa, names once tied to action and fire, now stood still, hands over hearts. As the trumpet faded, the group raised a military salute in unison, then bowed their heads in absolute silence. That silence outweighed any sermon, carrying everything: guilt, redemption, honor, and pride. After the ceremony, Maddox approached Frank, voice low. "Thank you for letting me stand here." Frank smiled. "You earned it yourself, Cole. Today no one remembers the slap, only who stood up after it." Maddox bowed his head, eyes catching the medals on Frank's chest. "You'll always be why I keep making amends." Frank placed a hand on his shoulder, then "Don't stop." As the ceremony ended, Viper signaled. The 97 bikers donned helmets, mounted their bikes. The Harley's engines roared to life, echoing across the plaza, powerful yet sacred. Onlookers turned, many placed hands on chests, some elderly veterans saluted, tears streaming. Frank was helped into the sidecar, Maddox securing his seatbelt. "Ready?" Maddox asked. Frank nodded, eyes on the flag flying high. "Today I'm just a soldier among brothers." Viper led the convoy, raising a hand. The 97 Harleys rolled out in unison, tires gliding over the stone pavement, reflecting sunlight like liquid steel. The pipes roared in waves, blending with the wind and applause from both sides of the road. Constitution Avenue seemed to tremble. Crowds lined the streets, American flags waving, phones raised to capture the moment. The legendary 97 Angels, escorting Frank Mallory and Maddox through the Capitol's heart. No slogans, no banners, just the winged skull emblem blazing in the sun. From afar, military helicopters flew low, dipping wings in salute. The press captured the scene, broadcasting live. This Memorial Day, America's past and present ride together, the old soldier honored, the fallen forgiven, and 97 bikers, a symbol of unity. As the convoy turned onto Constitution Avenue, afternoon sunlight slanted through the trees, casting the 97 Harleys' shadows long, like an endless stream. Frank looked up, squinting toward the distant Lincoln Memorial. By his ear, the engines hummed steady like a heartbeat, deep and firm. Maddox rode just behind the sidecar, eyes fixed on the old soldier ahead. In the wind he heard Frank murmur, as if to himself, "In the end, honor is the only thing left when all else is gone." Viper glanced in his rearview mirror, seeing both men, the one once humiliated and the one who caused it, now riding together on the same road. He twisted the throttle slightly, speeding up the convoy. The Harley pipes merged into a resounding symphony across the avenue. As the sun dipped, the convoy veered through the final plaza, onto Constitution Avenue. The crowd stood, clapping, shouting. For the veterans, for the Angels. The 97 Harleys passed, never stopping, never looking back. Frank sat upright, wind whipping the flag in his hand, Maddox riding beside, and behind, tens of thousands watched in reverent silence. The story closed as TV cameras captured the convoy shrinking down the avenue, the sunset staining the sky red. A caption appeared on screen. They rode for justice. They stayed for honor. The tale of the leather-clad angels ended, but their sound would echo forever in America's heart. If you believe honor and compassion still exist in this stormy world, hit subscribe to keep this flame burning with us. Thank you for joining the story of the 97 Angels. See you on the next journey, where justice still roars on America's roads.